بدنا نبقى كارم, we should go and collect people from outside. Thank you, Karim, حبيبي. ريما بتعرفي توفيق؟
Oh, there we go. Okay, so thank you, everybody. We're going to move to our third panel now. Palestinians as game changers. It's going to be moderated by Majid Khoui. He's a member of our national board. Majid, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Today this panel is going to discuss how Palestinians are game changers. I don't know how many of you are like me. About 3 years ago, I had the first chance of being able to visit Palestine, especially the part that is under 1948 occupation. And I found how ignorant I was about my own people. There are about 2 million Palestinian Arabs that are citizens of Israel, yes, but they are Palestinian Arabs that I knew very little about. And I was really ashamed. That's why I went and spent 9 days, and I was intending next year to go and take a whole bus and take my children, my grandchildren, and I have 9 grandchildren. All of them plus my nephews, my nieces, and their children, really a big bus, 50 people bus, to be able to go around Palestine to visit Nazareth, Tabariya, Haifa, Yafa, Lid, Ramle, all the way. It was really an eye-opener. There are about 14 million Palestinians, we see, all over the world. We are divided under several areas. Many of us are in the diaspora, some are under the PA, some are in Gaza, but there is also 2 million of us in the occupied territories of 1948. Anyway, today you're going to listen to several of those people that know a lot, and please, I beg you, ask questions, get educated. That's going to be very critical. Palestinians as game changers. Today I have with me 3 different people. When I say different people, from different areas of Palestine, 3 Palestinians. I'm going to start with, to my right immediately, is Suha Salman Musa. Suha is the co-director of Musawa Center, the Advocacy Center for Palestinian Arab Citizens of Israel, which promotes Palestinian Arab rights and a democratic society. She manages and develops Musawa's parliamentary, legal, international, and media advocacy for advancing the rights of Palestinian Israelis. She also focuses on strengthening community work. In recent years, Suha had led the initiative to establish Friends of Musawa in the USA, promoting the center's work abroad. Also next to Suha is Ja'far Farah. Ja'far Farah is the founder and general director of the Musawa Center, the Advocacy Center for Arab Citizens in Israel, is a long-time advocate and activist for the rights of the Palestinian Arab citizens of Israel. As a community organizer and activist, Mr. Farah was involved in establishing several Arab non-governmental organizations, including ILAM, ACAP, the Arab Center for Alternative Planning, and the follow-up Committee for Arab Education. Prior to founding the Musawa Center, Mr. Farah was a journalist and researcher for several years, working for the Haaretz Net, several Arabic newspapers and TV programs. To his right is Mr. Jonathan Kuttab. Jonathan is a Palestinian attorney and human rights activist. He grew up in Jerusalem, studied in the US, graduating from University of Virginia Law School. He is member of the Bar Association of New York, Palestine, and Israel. He is the executive director of FOSNA, Friends of Sabil North America, Mr. Kuttab founded a number of human rights organizations, including Al-Haq, the premier Palestinian human rights organization, and the Mandela Institute for Palestinian Prisoners and the Holy Land Trust. He is also a member of the Bethlehem Bible College Board of Trustees and Nonviolence International, and is active in many other civil society organizations in Palestine and internationally. He is a recognized authority on international law, human rights, and Palestinians and Israeli affairs. With that, I will shut up and pass it to Suha. Is that clapping because I shut up?
Or passing to Suha. Working? Yeah. Shukran, Majid. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks for the ADC. This is the first time that we are participating in such an event with the ADC. So I'll start with the sentence that Majid said, that he just recently get to know us. Who are us? We are the Palestinian 48, the Palestinian inside the green card, but how we like to call it, رغم كل شيء ومع كل شيء إحنا أصحاب البلاد. So I just want to share with you, and as Majid indicated, that it's going to be educational and informative about us as the Palestinians inside the green line. And after that, I'll talk about the Musawa Center and also why do we think or believe that we are a game changers. So we are a Palestinian with a citizenship inside Israel. We are 21% of the population in Israel. We have a citizenship, as I said, but we are treated as a second, even third-class citizens. Through the years, we have been facing challenges and discrimination in legislations, but also in practice. We live between formal discrimination in law, but also socioeconomic discrimination in practice that carried out over the years by the Israeli governments. We faces 35 laws that discriminate us and give the Jewish Israelis advantage in personal and in collective rights. I'm gonna just mention 3 of these laws. Maybe you know most of them, that I'm gonna share it with you. The first one is the nation-state law that was approved and passed in 2018 as a basic law, giving the constitutional status of this law. This law not only downgraded the Arabic language, but also as an official language in the state of Israel, but it also declared that the right of self-determination, it's only for the Jewish people only. The second law that I would like to share with you, that we as Palestinians are suffering daily from this law, is the Kamenetz law, the demolitions, the home demolitions that we are facing from the Triangle area, the Galil, the Naqab, land confiscation that we are daily is done by the Israeli governments. For instance, I want to share that Al-Araqib, if you heard about it, it's an unrecognized village in the Naqab, have been destroyed and demolished for more than 250 times. But we are still, and they are still, rebuilding this village. The other law that I would like, and we have been working directly with the families that are affected from this law, is the citizenship law. This is a form of racist and collective punishment that prevent over 45,000 families to be reuniting with each other. Meaning, if we, the Palestinian that have a citizenship, would marry a Palestinian from the Palestinian territory or from Gaza, the spouses do not get a legal status in Israel. That means that they do not get health insurance or any social benefits. That means that they can be deported anytime if the Israeli authorities will decide that. Among all these laws, we also suffering from, we have a third of our Palestinian community are displacement, right? Internal displacement. That means that people that live in Nazareth cannot go to Safuri and claim their houses and their lands there. So this is like a briefing of what we are suffering, the challenges that we are suffering. At the same time, we have severely underfunded from the Israeli government with sectors such as health care, such as welfare, education, and we as the Musawa Center also work with the economic development in order to demand our rights in funding our community. As a result of the underfunding, we are nearly 55% of the families inside Israel are at or below the poverty line. Moreover, decades of neglect, but also part of the government policies, we are suffering from internal violence and a crime that went out of control. And this is something that is to weakness our community in order not to be a game changer. I'll also add, you saw the events in last May. But before the events in last May, we always suffering from police brutality. Even if we participate in demonstrations, or you will be shot and killed by a police officer with no any investigation because you are a Palestinian. So here comes the work of the Musawa Center as a human rights and civil rights organization. Musawa means in Arabic equality. We work to promote the rights of our community, the culture, the political, the civil, and the economic rights. But more, we are also to promote the recognition of this community as a national indigenous with its own unique national culture and historical features. We use different tools. We use the governmental and parliamentary tools. We do work with the Knesset members in order to prevent any discrimination laws. We work with the economic development. We do research in order to demand our rights and the funds that this community needs. We also do international advocacy, and we'll expand about this work here, especially in the US. We do community organizing. We work with youth groups, we work with women, as well as we do media advocacy in order to strengthen our community. For instance, I want to bring some from the work that we did recently, especially when it comes to the citizenship law. In this summer, there was a voting for the citizenship law, which it's failed because of our work, that we did work with the families that were affected. We organized demonstrations, we organized meetings with the Knesset members, with the families, in order to tell the Knesset members how this law affect their daily life. Affect their children, affects their spouses. And we managed and we succeeded for now, because it's a long way, not to renew this law. During last May, we also, as you, I think, all know about the Sheikh Jarrah and the demonstration in Gaza, we led the emergency room for the Palestinian community and gave legal support through lawyers for people who were detained. I don't know if you know, but from the Palestinian community, 2,500 were arrested, and 400 is still in jail, and there is cases against them. So this is part of the work with other organizations that we are doing in order to give them support as much as we can, as well as to support injured young people who critically were injured, as well as people, especially young people and students, and we still have a case going on in courts that were unjustified, but that were determined from their job. They were fired just because they didn't appear to their job, not to mention why. They said this is a political issue. So they were fired from their job, and there's a court that we are also manage, as well as the people that were killed, especially the young man, 17 years old, Muhammad Kiwan. He was shot by a police officer, and no investigation were open. So we are claiming and demanding that there should be investigation against the police officers in order to get justice to this young man. I want to talk about especially the events. We can talk about the Land Day, we can talk about October 2000, but I don't have enough time, and I would like my colleagues here also to more get into this issue. But the massive demonstrations that we saw in May highlight exactly why we see us, the Palestinian, inside the green line as a game changer. The demonstration, which were mostly led by youth, by the way, showed that the Palestinian minority, or the Palestinian community, is highly energized and motivated and demand a change. Moreover, the string of elections in 2019 and 2020 showed the power of our political, that we can affect, the political scene in Israel. When our community decided to go and to vote, we got 15 seats, and this has prevented Netanyahu from forming a government. So we have, not only we are facing challenges, this is very important for us, to explain who we are also a unique community. We have strong approach, and we have also, we can change. If we decide to do something, this is what needs to be taken into consideration, that we have the power to change things, to demand, and this is what part of our work here in the US, especially in the international community, to talk about and to bring our voice as a strong community that suffers and will still suffer from this all discrimination that I mentioned, and there's a lot more. But this is important for us, that the work that we do and the voice that we bring to you as educational programs, as talking to other organizations, human rights organizations, and other organizations that they work here in order to change the discourse in the American community. It's important to tell them that these 20% that are living inside Israel have the power to change, and their voice needs to be heard. And if there any negotiation or talk about peace, they need to be included. You cannot ignore us anymore. And this is the message that we would love to provide here, the people here, and also other organizations and other officials in the US especially. Thank you.
Jafar, it's all yours.
Thank you. First, I would like to say Majid Mabruk for Palestine House in San Diego. And I hope to visit our house when we will be tomorrow in San Diego, when Amal is outside. But I hope that we will be able to visit and to see. We are proud. We distributed also some of the news about the event. And I hope that we will be able to see Palestine House all over. But the most important, to see the Palestine House back home. So I came with my wife from Haifa. Not an easy period for all of us. We just have been last May, and we still suffer from the effects of what happened last May with 2,500 people arrested. My son was one of them by the Secret Service. And of course, I was investigated. And in 2018, I was arrested with my other son, and my leg was broken in the police station, and we still fight against police violence in legal procedures. And we came here, and it wasn't easy flight for 24 hours almost, with broken leg, because we believe that you have to hear our voice asking you, we need you to bring the voice of the Palestinians in an institutional way, like and better than what AIPAC is doing. The case of my arrest was mentioned in the US human rights reports in 2019. But always in Lantos Committee in the Congress, they debate human rights reports of each country. The only lucky country that nobody talk about human rights violation and the discussion is not mentioned when it comes to the Lantos Committee in the Congress is the case of Israel. And in this sense, our struggle is in two directions. One, to protect ourselves, of course. But the second vision is to end the occupation and to build better future for all of us. And this is something that for years, nobody expected from the Palestinians, especially inside the Green Line, to be game changers and actors in peace building or ending the occupation. And it became clear for us, especially after the failure of Oslo, that the implementation of the two-state solution will have a huge impact on us. And in October 2000 and the breakdown of the Second Intifada, part of the reasons why, because Oslo implications on us will be disaster. Okay? We have been one nation and now we are five. غزة والضفة والقدس و48 و67 ويلا عد. No, we are one nation in the end of the day, and we need to find a way, even if it will be in different, it can be the Belgium exercise and the Spanish exercise or the UK exercise. But it's for clear today that we will not be the ones to say we are not interested in the two-state solution. It's Bennett and Netanyahu that is telling everybody in the international community, we don't want two-state solution. And it's about time that we tell the Jewish people what you want, guys. Let them decide what they want, how they want to live with us, because we will not disappear. And the face of the Palestinians, thank you. Some people start to talk about us like we have been there just yesterday. No. Tawfiq Zayyad was before us, and Mahmoud Darwish, and Samih Al-Qasim. And you know why they were very famous? Emil Habibi. You know why every Palestinian talk about Mahmoud Darwish and Emil Habibi and Tawfiq Zayyad? Because the daily meeting of us with the Jewish majority challenge us. Everybody in the Arab region and also the Israeli government since 48 tried to isolate us. Some of the Arab regimes tried to isolate us because they didn't want us to tell the real story about how they have been traitors in 48. They said, هدول خوان. Forget about them. And some people start this whole new mood of normalization, and we became like the only strangers in the region that we say, there will be no normalization with the people of the Middle East without ending the tragedy of the Palestinians. And we sit inside Israel, and we are telling the Jewish majority every day, you can talk to Bahraini government, Qatar, you can talk to anybody that you want. But in the end of the day, we are the ones to negotiate the future of this region. And this we can say that in Hebrew and Arabic and in English. And this accessibility, you know, of Tawfiq Zayad, when he used to be arrested, he used to write. And Mahmoud Darwish, the same thing. So this whole meeting between the leaders of the Palestinian community inside and the Jewish majority created a challenge and creativity. إبداع محمود درويش ونتيجة هذا المواجهة اليومية. It's a result of this daily meeting, daily conversation. And I just told some people here, you know, since I was the head of the Arab Students Union in the universities, usually I used to be arrested, you know, every half a year. And usually they used to bring me to the police station in Haifa. And there was a police officer there that used to investigate me. And we used to talk about everything except the issue why I was arrested. Politics, you know, families, everything else. They ask me about anything, I answer about my family. And suddenly last week, she wrote me on the messenger, we used to spend many hours together. I said, who is that? So I look at her picture, I understood that the police officer that used to investigate me when I was a student, now she's 70 years old, she wrote me, let's talk. That's the power of us, even when we are arrested, that's our power, that we can communicate as equals, even with all the laws that have been discriminating us since 48. We suffered from military regime, and yes, we suffer from police violence, and we, unfortunately, in the Musawa Center, we are also representing families that lost their kids as a result of police violence. And we know what it means. So guys, we need you to help us to outreach to the African American community here that have been struggling against the police violence. The Jewish American community is not our enemy, but the people that are promoting the occupation, if they are Jews or Christians, they are our enemy, and we have to fight against these people that are implementing occupation over our people and implementing discrimination and justifying discrimination against our people. And that's why we are here. We are here, and believe me, we have a lot of responsibilities today. We are also advocating against the systematic discrimination in the state budget to tell our story. But we also here because we want to give you the message, the people that are here and the people that we see us outside through the live broadcasting, because we need you to be much more effective and active as Arab Americans and to build coalitions with progressive communities, and we need you to give us the stage. I know that always when we come here to the US, people invite us to have lunch and dinner and etc. I always tell them, مش جوعانين. We want your contacts to the Congress. We need your contacts to the decision makers, to the media. So I ask you here, I don't know who vote here, but I ask you in the next election, go and vote. And I ask you also, if you have contacts in the Congress, in media, use the fact that we, from the ground, are here. Help us to communicate with any organization, any progressive organization in any community in the US, because we are acting locally, but we know that any American decision have an impact on us on the ground. So we are here to encourage you, not only to build Palestine House in San Diego, which is great, but to support ADC and to support organizations like ADC that can bring our voice also at the Capitol. Because we are not here, and you know, usually when we go to Berlin or to Brussels, always Palestinians are very polite, but not practical. We need ADC to be strong. We need Arab American organizations to be strong, to be partners to Jewish Voices for Peace and J Street in equal basis. That's very important, that when any organization promote act, and there is now act that have been promoted in the Congress, Two-State Solution Act, that even people that think that they are progressive and they promote two-state solution and end for the occupation, that they will not include in this resolution in three different places, Jewish state. Because it will not mean peace for us in 48. If there will be two-state solution and Israel will be declared by the US and by Europe as a Jewish state, it will have implications on us, the Palestinians, inside 48. And that's exactly what is the Jewish nation state law, which is basic law that says Israel is Jewish state, point. So in this sense, this uniqueness, and I know, like there are some friends like Tim Kaine and other members of Congress and even Sanders, and we met him 2 years ago, and we told him, this piece of legislation that have been promoted even during Obama administration on two-state solution, take out the Jewish state because it have implications on the Palestinian community. Thank you. So I would like to thank Nabil and Khalid. Where is Khalid? And Khalid Safouri and everybody that is doing the great job to have this meeting and to facilitate and to invite us to bring the voice of the Palestinian community in Israel. And it's not easy for us to work on this double life. Okay, some people think that we have identity crisis. We don't have identity crisis because we are the identity of the land. احنا بنعرف الزعتر وبنعرف الزيتون، احنا بنعرف الأرض، نعرف أرضنا شو بتعطي. So it means that we are not the ones, but there was like different groups all over that try to tell us, you are Israelis. We are citizens. We are Palestinians. We are Arabs. And we are your partners. Send your friends and sons and daughters to come and to know our homeland. We have a building in Haifa that we took and renovated after years. So I know, Majid, how long it takes until you get Arab to pay to have the House of Palestine in San Diego. But we have like a building in Haifa that have been renovated, and we have students' dormitories there. We have spaces for NGOs. We have higher education programs in the same building, and we share it with other organizations, from filmmakers to lawyers and etc. So in parallel to the work that you do here, send your students, if you teach in universities, send them to come to Haifa, to be located in our center, and then they can work in Jisr al-Zarqa or in the Naqab or in Jenin or in Tul Karim. Send them to know our homeland, to be able to be partners, and to know how to liberate our people and to liberate the Jewish people from the occupation and isolation mentality that have been implemented for 70 years. I always tell Jews in my talks with them, hey guys, you have memory of 3,000 years. Next year in Jerusalem, you kept telling yourself, next year in Jerusalem. So we are only 70 years. And even if it will be 80 years or 90 years, we have the right to be one nation and to build a better future. And we can do that without throwing anybody to the sea, but not to be in the desert. بدناش نكون احنا بمخيمات لاجئين واحنا ولا مرة لا عملنا صابوني من حدا ولا زتينا حدا في البحر. It's not our program. Our program is to build peace based on equality, based on respect, and there is enough space in Palestine for everyone. So thank you. and use us as a resource. We are back in Haifa. We will wait for you. Thank you.
Jonathan.
Thank you. Those were two wonderful speeches. I want to first start by thanking ADC for even daring to have a conference like this and a convention in person. And each one of you who has dared to come and traveled and taken the risk during this pandemic, I think you deserve thanks because it is not easy. I remember coming to ADC conventions that were just full of hundreds of people. And now we are few, but thank God there is also Zoom and live streaming, and other people can follow us. This is a very significant, pivotal point, because on the one hand, it looks like things are really very bad. It looks like the Zionist movement has succeeded in dividing us, as he said, into 5 different people, each with a separate legal regime that governs it. Separate rules, separate regulations, separate items, and a matrix of control to keep us separate. And I have to admit that our own leaders have participated in this process under the pretense of being pragmatic and being reasonable. We accepted the so-called Oslo process, which was disastrous from the beginning. At a minimum, it gave up our claim to 78% of Palestine. It totally negated, didn't even mention Palestinians who are Israeli citizens. They're not your problem, they're not your question. They were not even mentioned in the whole Oslo process. They basically said the issue of the refugees is to be discussed later. One of the permanent permanent status issues. They separated East Jerusalem, about 20% of the West Bank, and created a unique regime where there are residents but not citizens. So they can be kept separate from the Israeli citizens who are Palestinians and also separate from the West Bank. They literally divided also Gaza from the West Bank, and we participated. Our leadership participated. Both Fatah and Hamas participated in this utter disaster of separating people from Gaza from people from the West Bank. Even the West Bank itself was divided, and you really need to know this, into areas A, B, and C. Area C has 60% of the West Bank. For all intents and purposes, it is treated as the State of Israel. Palestinians can't even sometimes go there without permits and licenses. An entire network of settlements, about 700,000 Jewish settlers, are living today in the West Bank, and they have their entire system of roads, of laws, of health, of education, of infrastructure, of policing, that is totally separate and distinct from that which applies to Palestinian Arabs. Something happened, however, that this system of fragmentation, which reduced the whole Palestinian question to some kind of, oh, what do the Palestinians want? They want a state. Okay, we have something called the Palestinian Authority, which is sort of a state in the making. Give it a little more time, give it a little more flexibility, while meanwhile it is being crushed and being turned into cantons, and our leadership has accepted a role that is so far below the minimum of our national expectations, and that became the standard. The so-called two-state solution, while everybody knows it's not going to happen, while every action and sometimes even the words of Israeli leaders totally undermined even the possibility of a Palestinian state, yet that was the mantra. That was the slogan, that was the goal. Everybody is working for a two-state solution, and somebody will be totally supportive of the occupation, but say, oh, don't blame me, I'm for the two-state solution. I don't do anything about the settlements. I don't do anything about the occupation. I don't restrict armaments and support and political support for Israel. I allow them to get away with everything. But as long as I'm talking about two-state solution, you can ignore the reality on the ground. But something has happened. During the last few years, especially thanks to he who shall not be named, the previous administration, thanks to him, suddenly the reality became clear. They're not going to allow Palestinians to have a state. That became an alibi and an excuse for a continued status quo, for continued permanent occupation, this time maybe even with support or assistance or acquiescence by the Palestinian leadership. The confusion between the chairman of the PLO and the head of the Palestinian Authority, which used to be the same person, has been now turned against us, so that the head of the Palestinian Authority, who barely has authority over parts of the West Bank, 40% of the West Bank, is now being required and asked to speak for the whole Palestinian people the way the PLO used to be speaking on behalf of all Palestinians inside and outside, the sole legitimate representative. But I am telling you, there is something different, because Palestinians are game changers. Because of the persistence, because of the stubbornness, because of the steadfastness, the sumud of the Palestinians, including those who were totally ignored by the Palestinian leadership, like our people who are in the Galilee and inside the so-called borders of the State of Israel. And because of the continued vibrancy of civil society in the occupied territories of Gaza and the West Bank, and because of you in the diaspora, because of groups like ADC and others who continued to lift the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian reality, who continued to say, we shall return, who continued to believe in the Palestinian identity and the Palestinian narrative and the Palestinian memory and the Palestinian rights. Because of this, I don't want to say the reality, the narrative of Palestinian state, of the two-state solution, of continued occupation has now collapsed. People now know, not just the Israelis, not just their supporters, people know that this is a failed project and they must go back to square one. And square one, and I have to say it very clearly, and we have to deal with it very clearly, square one is a Palestinian people, a nation that's been living for hundreds and thousands of years on that land that was set upon by an outside force, a settler colonial force that tried to create it into a Jewish, exclusively Jewish place. The Zionist movement, with the power and the support and the military might and the billions upon billions of money, with the support of the only superpower in the world, trying to create a Jewish state that exclusively serves the Jews, that doesn't even serve its own citizens if they're not Jewish. The idea of equality, musawa, is now one of the most subversive things that you can say in Israel. To talk about equality. To talk about human rights also puts you in the category of suspect and dangerous. Recently, the records showed that very early on, from the early 50s, the head of the Shin Bet stated that for us, security means the Jewishness of the state. So all this talk about security has nothing to do with weapons and security. It has to do with maintaining the Jewishness of the state. And we need to change the game again. We need to tell everybody that this fight between the Zionist movement and the Palestinian national movement, which has been going on for over 100 years, can no longer be settled by one party at the expense of the other. We need to come up with a new idea, with a new vision that doesn't negate and demonize and exterminate the other side, but that incorporates it on the basis of equality, on the basis of mutual respect, on the basis of recognition of its identity, of our identity and our history and our connection to the land, and not just some kind of mythical ancient claims that are being revived. With all the power in the world, with all the support in the world, it can no longer happen. The Zionist program for Palestine has been to turn it into a Jewish state, as Jewish as France is French. The idea initially was, this is a land without a people, for a people without a land. The people of the land have now made it clear, we are here and we are here to stay. The ethnic cleansing that took place in 1948 and continued in 1967 and continues to this day through discrimination, through trying to push out, keep out as many Arabs as you can, as many non-Jews, bring in as many Jews as you can, has failed. It's no longer possible. So now they have to create a new narrative. That is why they have to keep talking as if there is something called a Palestinian state headquartered in Ramallah. There isn't. Palestine is Palestine, and it's headquartered in Jerusalem. That is our capital. Now, can you have such a state and still accommodate all the people today living in the land? We need to also think ourselves. We also need to break with the game that pits us against each other, that fragments us as a people. We must now assert again. What happened in May of this year was phenomenal, because all of a sudden, what was happening in Sheikh Jarrah, which was just a few families in East Jerusalem, what was happening in Jerusalem met with a direct response from Gaza, a direct response from the Galilee, from Nazareth, from Lud, from Jaffa, with a direct response in the West Bank, which the Palestinian Authority was trying to dampen down, and with a direct response from you on the outside 2/3 of the Palestinian people who are living abroad. And the message was simple and clear, as it was radical and transformative. And the message was, we are one people. We are not 5 different people. We are one people, the Palestinian people. We demand and deserve to be free in all of Palestine. And when somebody says Palestine should be free from the river to the sea and gets thrown out of their job in New York, all of a sudden we realize that our struggle is really a universal struggle. Our struggle and the struggle of Black Lives Matter and the people in Ferguson, our struggle and the struggle of people in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, in Egypt, in Libya, throughout the world is a single struggle. It's a struggle for humanity. It's a struggle for dignity. It's a struggle for equality. It's a struggle for democracy, and it's a struggle for freedom. And it's a struggle that resonates with everybody who is decent and who has a conscience. It is not an accident that some of the best supporters for this struggle are Jewish people in the United States, from JVP and others, who realize what is happening is totally unconscionable. Among young people, especially, but also throughout, a majority now are saying, yeah, that's apartheid. Yeah, that's clearly wrong. It's illegal. Despite the media and what it says and shows us, and they're talking about Hamas rockets, we look at the television and we see the buildings that go down are Palestinian buildings in Gaza. We don't see any buildings in Israel that are destroyed. Yeah, there was a little hole in the wall in one building. So you can say all you want about the war between Gaza and, between Hamas, and Israel, but the reality that people can see is that there's no war. There's just an onslaught on all people in Gaza who are facing this totally illegal, this totally huge power supported by the United States. And what, they're afraid of balloons? Little balloons that have a little, really ridiculous. And you can pass your lies as much as you want. In Arabic, we have a proverb that says, you can fool some of the people some of the time. And you can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time. But you can't fool all the people all the time. You can't, you can't hide the sun with a sieve. People will see it. Eventually, truth will prevail. And young people especially, from all sides, from all communities, throughout the world, without having a personal, individual, financial interest, will come to the support of our cause. And this is our task. This is where we come in.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much. I'm going to open it for questions. Rima, can somebody pass the...
They need it also
For the broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today, and for ADC for giving us this opportunity to hear from you. I have questions to all 3 of you. Jonathan, I'll start with Jonathan. I met yesterday with a member of Congress who still thought that the 2-state solution is still viable. And I had to tell him that it's not, it's a fallacy. And so he said, so what is it then? And I went through about equality, justice, and so on and so forth. He said, then maybe we can, we're going to send funds to to the Palestinians. I said it can't go to the PA because it doesn't get to the people. So then how can we do it? I said we have to get you a list of NGOs that you can support unless you can think of something else for us to. So they still think there's a two-state solution and it's still viable. To answer you, Jafar, if we knew, and I'm sorry, it's my mistake, it's not ADC's, that you're coming, we would have set up appointments with members of Congress here while you're here. Then we wouldn't have lost that chance, so they hear from you directly. I mean, I can tell them I was born in Jerusalem, but I live here, but they need to hear directly from you. So next time, maybe we can coordinate better, and that will be set up while you're here, so that chance is not lost.
Sorry to interrupt, Rima. We have a Zoom tomorrow evening. If you can get in touch with them, we'll send you the Zoom that they can go ahead and listen and talk to Jafar and Rima.
Sure, but it's different when you sit with them eyeball to eyeball and you tell them that. It changes the narrative completely. And so I will help do that next time, so my apologies.
No, it's next week. You will help for that next week because next week we'll be there in DC.
No, some of them are here.
Yeah. Next week we will be in DC, so
if you tell me what dates and time, then yes. But this member of Congress was heading out of the country to specifically talk about how to bring peace forward and move things in the Middle East, especially in Palestine/Israel. So that's why it would have been great if you were there. Then I have multiple questions for Suha. You mentioned internal violence. I wasn't very clear about what you meant by internal violence. Do you mean domestic violence? Do you mean violence of Palestinians against each other? I need you to explain that further. Yes, I will move. And then when you mentioned that there's 2,500 that have been arrested, 400 are still in jail, then we can take that up with members of Congress because they want something to do. But you need to give us the narrative that we can go to them and say, there's 400 in jail, we need to get them out. And we know that they need to co-sponsor HR 2590 by Betty McCollum, which gets to that. And then you mentioned about the funding, the lack of funding. Can you clarify the underfunded? You said the Israeli government is underfunding. Can you explain the mechanics of that? Sorry, Majid. Thank you.
Okay, I will start. When we talk about a paradigm change, it's not easy. Everybody still lives with the language of two states. Even those who are convinced it's not going to happen still use that terminology until we offer them something new. And something new is a new vision of one state that serves all the population. That's democratic, but that's also responsive to the needs of both sides. That's not an easy sell because everybody's invested in the current status quo. Everybody is comfortable. There's the state of Israel and there's the occupation. And we have to give a little bit more to the Palestinians. They are here and they are there. No, we are everywhere. We are everywhere, and we have to find a way that gives us genuine democracy. And we have to reassure them. This doesn't mean whoever's got 51% can ignore the others and can delegitimize the others or can do to them what they did to us when they were in power and when they were the majority. So we have to also think creatively. I wrote a short book called Beyond the Two-State Solution, where I tried to set out a vision that commends itself to people of goodwill like this senator, that shows him that it is possible for us to live together, that it doesn't mean an elimination of anybody. They can still live there and be fully, totally part of this new state, but we also have to be there. They can have the right of return if they want to, but we also need the right of return. They can have their security guaranteed, and there will be guarantees, but we also need the guarantees for our security from the daily police transactions. There's two others who need to answer.
I would like to respond to this specific question. There is no doubt in my mind that the two-state is dead. It's gone. Don't even dream of it. They don't want it. I believe in the one state. There is no two other solutions that we have on the table that can ever exist other than the one state. However, that requires time. The first step is for the PA, or what I call the Vichy government. If you know Vichy, when the Germans occupied France, they appointed a government, which was the Vichy government. When the Vichy Palestinian government gets lost, resigns, dissolves, and negates Oslo, and hands everything back to Israel, everything, that would be the first step towards what I will call the ultimate goal that will happen, which is the single state, where ultimately everybody is going to be equal under the same law. Now, that won't happen during my lifetime, nor is going to happen during your lifetime. But that will happen ultimately. There is no two questions about it. I tell my Jewish friends and the Zionists even, they and I are living in America while we are willing to kill each other, but we are all living under the same set of laws and equal. And that can happen in Palestine. Thank you.
You know, it took us, I think, almost 40 years to convince the international community to adopt the language of self-determination of the Palestinians and to start to talk about two-state solution. And part of our challenge wasn't only the international community, but also some of the Arab regimes, and it's still part of our challenge. Let me disagree with some people here. We are not the ones that should give Netanyahu and Bennett the opportunity to say that the Palestinians don't want two-state solution. Let them do that. ليش لازم احنا ناخذ الملف على حالنا يعني؟ خليهم هن مع ان they are not interested in the two-state solution. They are building settlements everywhere. Tell me that يعني this member of Congress, ايدي بزنارك. Let me see if you can implement the self-determination. I will give you 2 years, 3 years. Let's make timetable. يعني since 93, you know, I will tell you a secret. The ones that started to promote two-state solution were the Palestinians inside the Green Line. يعني توفيق زياد وإميل حبيبي. They start to talk about two-state solution before anybody else. قبل ياسر عرفات. Okay? That's historically. This is what happened, that the Palestinians, the leadership of the Palestinians inside the Green Line said self-determination and two-state solution. This is the slogan was. Now, after Oslo, after 93, we saw the implementation. We saw the implementation. We saw the results. And in the breakdown of the Second Intifada of 2000, it was a message of the Palestinians inside the Green Line that it didn't work and it will not work. Today, the only group that implement the one-state solution is the Palestinians inside the Green Line. You know, when 15 years ago, Zababdi, the people in Zababdi came to me to tell me, we will build university in Zababdi. طلعت عليه and I was like, you know, we couldn't build university in Nazareth, and we still can't build university. You will make university in Zababdi? We have today 5,000 students from inside the Green Line that study in Zababdi, and we still can't build university in Nazareth, a city with a history of almost 2,000 and something years. مش قادرين. We don't have, you know, they prevent us from building university. When you talk about laws, they prevent us from building university until now. In 81, Tawfiq Zayad, as the mayor of Nazareth, asked the Israeli government to build a university in Nazareth. Until now, we can't. And in Jenin, there is a new university and 10,000 students, 5,000 of them Palestinians from inside. So we are actually practice the one-state solution more than the settlers. More than the settlers. But I ask you, as a Palestinian, let Netanyahu and Bennett come to everybody in the international community and let them take responsibility of the failure of the international commitment. تعالوا نزتها عليهن، خليهن إنه يتحملوا المسؤولية. And that's very important message because we always come, it's like excuse. Now you, the Palestinians, don't want this two-state solution. It's not us. The international community is looking for reasons not to take responsibility to end the occupation. They can pay to have the occupation. Destroy Gaza and we will build Gaza. Destroy Gaza. And هاي اللعبة until when we will play it with them. That we should hold the international community responsible for self-determination and ending the occupation and two-state solution. And let them come back to us and say the Israelis don't want that. Let them take responsibility on that. خلينا يعني don't give them the exit, please. Let's be more أذكياء and more smart than them. Don't give them the exit. Hold them responsible for the failure of the two-state solution. And that's something that we know that also inside, when we have this discussion inside, it's always an issue also. Okay? We are the ones who want peace. You don't want peace. It's not us that we don't peace. And when they practice social economic discrimination and state budget and etc., when a member of Congress, they allocate money for peace building and etc., we in the Musawa Center, for example, we don't ask for any USAID money. Okay, because we will lose our credibility as a result of American policy. And that's very important that, every American policymaker think that we, the Palestinians, want American money. No, we don't want, and we don't ask for USAID funding. We don't, as Musawa Center, since we have been established, we are not funded by USAID. We don't apply for USAID funding. We have a political issue with American decision makers. Also, when they take a decision on money laundering, it have implications on us, on the crime on the Arab community. Because the mafia in the Arab community became the biggest bank more than all Israeli banks as a result of drug money and weapon money and etc. and khawa. And the fawda that we suffer from inside the Green Line today is the same fawda that have been implemented between 2002 to 2006 in the West Bank and in Gaza, until Abu Mazen came and offered them, we will make this التنسيق الأمني, the cooperation. So in this sense, it's very important to take in consideration that you work with organization on the other side, that they design policies, they implement it, they did it in the West Bank, and now they are doing this internal violence that you ask, and I will let Soha to talk about it. They implement this, what was implemented in the West Bank and Gaza until Hamas and the PA start to be the ones that will decide how to run the show and how cooperate with the Israelis when it comes to many issues.
Thank you, Jafar. Soha.
طيب, I have 3 questions, right? So I'll start with the numbers of the arrest. Yeah, 2,500 were arrested. Up till now, we have 400 that are still in courts. The issue here, and it needs to be more explained, the people that are in jail now and they are faces charges are young people. Most of them this is the first time that have been arrested. That means that the interrogation inside the police stations with the police officers and even with the Shabak, this is something that they have not experienced before. And a lot of them, they can, how you call it, I'm trying to find الجملة بالعربي. Some of them, yes. Some of them were. So if they will accuse them of throwing stones or attack police officers, they will, confirm that they did that without knowing that they are, confirming that they confess, exactly, that they did that. So this is a huge problem. And the other problem is that during the events, we worked with the lawyers that they were volunteering during 3-4 weeks. But after that, these lawyers have also, they need to work, and they have to also, they have their offices, so they cannot continue volunteering. And this is a problem that we as an organization and also as a community and also the families of the people that were arrested, that they need to put a lawyer and they need to pay for these lawyers. And a lot of the lawyers, they are from, from the Niyab al-Ammi, the general, yes, yeah. So that means that they did not get a good and professional representation. So this is why the cases are still in courts. And
So you mean it's public defender?
Yes.
yes, exactly, yes. So this is for the arrests and the people that were, that they are still in jails. By the way, as I said, we are also working with people that have injured. People lost their eyes, and they're still, we have still cases in courts, and this is still ongoing cases. As for the, I'm going to talk about the internal violence because this is a very, how you call it?
It's a big issue.
Not only big, not only sensitive, it's something that eats us from inside. So for the underfunding from the government, as you know, the state budget also here. By the way, we are the only organization inside the Green Light Palestinian organization that do a research and economic development and do state budget analysis in order to put in front of the governmental offices what are the demands of the Arab community, the Palestinian community from each ministry. So in terms of unfunding, that means that I don't know if you have been heard about 922. Yeah, you did? Okay. So we were supposed to get 13, I think, billion shekels, but eventually we got 3 billion shekels. This affects us in different aspects. In healthcare, that means they do not provide funding for hospitals and for healthcare in our area. That means in our Arab villages and towns. That means that people need to go to the Tel Aviv area and to get this healthcare services. That means that that affects our employment. As I said, 55% of the families are at or below the poverty line because women cannot go and have to work because they need to travel, and we have a lack of infrastructures in public transportations, as well as we do not have industrial zones around our area, and this is really affect the mobility of women, especially because they have their houses, they have their children, as well as educational. The Jewish student will receive 20%, if I'm not mistaken, funding more than the Arab student in our Arab system or in our educational systems. So it affects us in different levels and in different aspects. And this is also something when you have the poverty and it's increasing, and also COVID increased this situation. What Jafar said about the black market, this is something that directs us for the internal violence. Not only this one, like people they are suffering, they do not have jobs, and they will go to the families that are the crime families, or how you call it, crime organizations, in order to be soldiers for them. And if people do not pay, like restaurants or others do not pay, they will go and just, protection, بالضبط. And this has increased the internal violence in our community. It's very important also to talk about how many people were killed this year, 2021. 101 people were killed. This is not counting the injured people or the people that were shooting at their houses or their businesses. From 2000 till 2021, 20 years almost, 1,480. And if you remember, in 2000, we have the October demonstrations. Since then, we have increasing in the internal violence because of we are lacking funding, increasing the poverty, but also the illegal weapon that is we are having in our community. It's a huge issue. And this is a systematic policy from the government and from the police authorities that they do not do enough or they do not want to do enough because, as I said at the beginning, this is something that can weakness our society. Once we kill each other, we will forget to deal with anything else, only to focus in our violence and our crimes and revenge.
I think I wanted to be clear to everyone that the money was paid by taxes, but it's due to you, correct? To the vice. It's not that we're begging for it. No.
The lady in the back. We'll come back to you, Rima.
Thank you all for your talk. I have a question for Jafar. I can understand your suggestion on building partnerships with JVP, but I don't understand at all your suggestion with building partnership with J Street. They are very problematic in so many ways. They are openly against BDS, so how is it that you find that to be helpful to build partnership with them? That's one question, and I have two more, but I'm just gonna say one more, if that's okay, and this is directed also to Rima. Rima, last week we've been really struggling trying to find help for the hunger strikers. We have 600 hunger strikers in Palestine right now. 2 of them are in critical condition, 80 days, and Kayed is, that's here.
كايد الفسفوس 86 days and مقداد القواسمة 79 days.
So we are looking for help in trying to see if we can interfere and help them from here. This is especially directed toward the administrative detention injustice that our people face on a daily basis. So please, if you know someone that can help us get through to that, let's talk. Thank you.
Go ahead and answer the first question.
I refer to progressive forces. I said progressive. I didn't mention J Street or Jewish Voices for Peace. I think it's very important to look for progressive voices. Actually, I think part of our challenge is also to talk to and to tell J Street. We saw the piece of legislation that have been promoted by J Street with members of Congress, and we mentioned that. We said 3 places, Jewish state, it's undermined the status of the Palestinians, and it's not accepted by us. And this dialogue is very important to raise it with any organization that is active here. Okay, so in this sense, there is a dialogue that we can do with different actors, but to expect that J Street will replace ADC, we don't expect that. I think it's first our responsibility to build our institutions and to come as a partners to any other organization in equal basis, and to put our language on this cooperation with any organization. So we have our basis for any cooperation with the J Street or with any other organization. I think our dialogue when it comes to even organizations like J Street, when they promote peace, they have to understand that peace with Jewish state is not something that we will accept it. So it's very important for us in any dialogue with any actor, even media, that we put also our language and to say what is our limits when we talk about what it means to be progressive. Also, we had in the past some dialogue also with Martin Luther King III and other groups, and it's our voice is not heard enough and is not organized enough. And when I look at J Street and Jewish Voices for Peace and the Arab American Organization and AIPAC, of course, I feel that we need to do much more. Much more. We need, and that's part of why I am here, is to call you to do much more, because we are too weak when it comes to decision making in the US. And this is something that we need to strengthen. We will have actually a session tomorrow with the Jewish Voices for Peace and in San Diego. And we will have another one, I think, in New York. But we are open. We are open to debate our future and to put our truth on the table with anybody that want to listen.
Ammar.
Thank you for all your efforts. Jafar, by the way, tomorrow when you go to San Diego, you will be happy to know that San Diego is on the same latitude as Haifa, so same Khatt al-Ard. And if you have the opportunity to go and visit Point Soledad and look south, look west and north, it's exactly as if you're standing on Jabal al-Karmel.
I've been in Haifa, that means.
Yeah. So, and there are so many areas called Carmel in San Diego. Wow. We live in one of them. So my question, can you just explain to us what's happening with the politics? Like, who's Mansour Abbas? Why is he taking that position? All of those things that are really confusing to see the Islamic movement, one person like Sheikh Ra'id Salah in the prison, and the other part of the Islamic Party is with Netanyahu or with the Likud. I mean, what's going on?
Look, some people in our community look for ways to affect regional process. The community power led the political leadership in 2015 to be united. And it wasn't an easy process to force all political groups from Islamic movements to the secular movements to work together and to build the joint list. Now, I don't blame anybody else. We should take responsibility as Palestinians in general. And that's why we say, let's talk about as game changers. Of course, the fragmentation of the whole region is a result of also international intervention or Arab intervention. I participated in some meetings to try to mediate between Hamas and Fatah in South Africa. And in a certain point I said, it's not you, it's the people that allow you to be like this. As a result of the frustration of the community, in 2019, the Palestinian community inside the Green Line understood our power in going and vote, and actually gave the message when the joint list have been divided. The people boycotted the election. And from 13, we went down. The joint list went down to 9. And gave the message to Mansour Abbas and to Ayman Odeh and to Ahmad Tibi, we want you united. And they have been forced in the next election to be united again, and the people went and voted, and they gave them 15 seats. And the next election, when they have been divided again, only 47% of the community went and voted, and they are today 10 seats. So this is the power of the people that can effect, actually, to punish political leadership, that if you don't be united and don't work together, we can punish you. It haven't been strong enough. You know, I tell always my friends and people that we are active. We were very active in the citizenship law. And, you know, since 2003, I know in personal the suffer of the families. And we went to them to try to convince them to vote against extension of the family unification law. And in the end, they have been divided in the voting and the government failed. I listened to some people here outside. There is this illusion that, you know, the worst is Netanyahu.
No.
Bennett and Netanyahu is almost the same. Bennett, the current prime minister, already shelled Gaza 3 times. Nobody talk about it. After 20 years, people hate Netanyahu. Every war, every crisis, Netanyahu. Today, nobody blame Bennett. And we have some people also in the Palestinians, also in Ramallah, but also inside the Green Line, that have the illusion that maybe Bennett will deliver something. You know, when Obama administration was elected, I told his people from the beginning, guys, don't have the illusion that Netanyahu will give you anything. Not 2 states, not 1 state, nothing. So I think it's also part of our responsibility to tell Mansour Abbas and other people, in the end, it's not only state budget allocation and etc., but also when it comes to the occupation and prisoner strike and family unification, Bennett will not deliver rights or human rights to Palestinians, even if he will get the support of part of the Islamic movement. So it's something that confusing all of us also inside, and it's very sensitive issue. I hope that we will be able, as a result of the power of the people, that we will be able in the next year or 2, we will be able to force again the political parties to understand that we have responsibility to be united, to work together, and still to try to liberate the Jewish majority from this whole occupation mentality, not that they will not occupy us instead of liberating them.
Thank you, Jafar. Yes, Amal. Sorry. We wrap it up? Okay, one last question then. Flip a coin. Karim.
This is amazing. Our first, few years ago, Dr. Jamal Zahalka came to San Diego and we hosted him. After him, Dr. Tibe came to speak at the American Muslims of Palestine conference in Chicago. And you're the third group that I got familiar, but this is the most effective, and we were not aware of you. I mean, honestly, which is great to hear from you, you know, and to know of you.
Question?
The question is, there is a video, it's a follow-up. Actually, Ammar had my question, but a follow-up to what Ammar said. The circulation of this video about this Knesset, Israeli Knesset, shaming the Palestinian members of the Knesset about voting against teaching the Arabic language. Could you just touch on that? And my last question, please, if you're in Washington, D.C., let me know. We can put you in touch with the American Muslims for Palestine, which is Dr. Osama Abu Rashid, very active, an excellent advocacy for Palestine at the level of the Congress. So we'll be happy to please visit him if you have time in DC. Thank you so much.
I think he's referring to something on WhatsApp yesterday.
Look, guys, we are here. Okay, we will go on with this discussion outside. But just for this question, and maybe we finish it. Hey guys, this guy was a Likud guy that is criticizing Islamic movement guy. You know, it's part of the propaganda that is taking place now in these days. We are about now the most important thing that will, the most important thing in Israel today is the state budget. If they will be able to approve the state budget, then you have Israeli government for the next 2 years. If the Islamic movement will be forced not to support the state budget, then there will be another election next year. So the Likud try to convince and to embarrass the Islamic movement. Of course, you know, today, unfortunately, the only group that's still against the occupation and still promote peace and etc. is the joint list with 6 seats. Today in the Knesset, you have 114 Knesset members that somehow they are supporting the occupation. Okay? Even in this case, even the Islamic movement, as part of the coalition, they are not talking about ending the occupation and siege around Gaza and etc. So we are facing big challenge to change the whole political scene in the next few years. All these videos is part of the propaganda that is taking place. Forget it, you know, let's keep the faith and go ahead in building the image of the Palestinians as game changers. And I would like just to finish, everybody that sit in this place or listen to us today, please, next week we will be in DC, and if you have any contacts, call your members of Congress, senators, and etc. to meet with us and to listen to our stories. We have a lot to tell, and we have also some ideas, fresh ideas, how also to change the reality in our region. Thank you, and have a nice
Jafar, and thank you, everybody.